band together to try to basically maybe challenge that issue.
So that challenge, this issue needs to be challenged, but of course challenged in the most appropriate ways with political voice rather than simply individual voice. It's not going to work. So it has to be, from academics, from scholarship, from governments and so on, because who are the opposition that you're dealing with? The opposition is not an individual entity. The opposition is an institution backed by political powers, backed by, in fact, maybe superpowers, and backed by, you might say, satanic forces around. So it's important that we need to drive this conversation, this challenging, in the way that is appropriate. We can't just simply speak to people and you think it's going to solve the problem, for example. It has to be challenged in a particular way, it has to be channeled in a particular way, and it has to address the root problem of who's controlling the narrative, who is in the control of the direction of the narratives. I'm talking about narratives of LGBTQ, all these issues of liberal, secularist ideologies when there's no belief in God or an atheistic understanding. Who are you going to control? Who are you going to have an oppositional voice to? Who are you going to raise voice to? A whole country says it's a crime if you are homophobic or if you are this phobic or that phobic. What are you going to do? Because it's already legislated. So you have to talk about on the levels of legislation that there shouldn't be legislation happening in the first place. So how you are going to change the minds of people?
That's where I was questioning in the beginning. Was to wonder about your perspective on, because I think that's something that both your religion and my religion could agree on, to say, look, we could work together in mutual ways to support your ability to raise your children in the ways that you want, and that we could raise our children the way that we want to the dictates of our heart. Those are places where I'd love to see more religious people actually trying to figure out where those common ground are, and saying, okay, we could, and then actually work to have political effect. And I've actually seen a few models of that I've been very impressed with. People who I thought were very ahead. Up to and even including some religious groups working with LGBTQ people to say, okay, here's the places where we want to say we have safety, we have peace, and we can agree on this. Let's try and get some legislation put forward, and then we can disagree on all this other stuff, and we can agree on this, but the amazing thing was as they talked about it, as they worked on it, there was some more mutual understanding. There's too much fear in the world today because we don't know each other and we don't know how we think, and we think that but when we work together face to face, I think there's
so we have a lot of common in terms of our ideals and goals, how to live in a society with this,
and sometimes just our problem.
So what, from the Islamic perspective, look, I'm not a scholar by any means, right? But what I'm just telling you, if you want to understand how Islam approaches this issue, there's a lot of nuances involved. Multi-faith engagement has a lot of diluting happening within religious belief systems and practices. So Islamic scholarship will say, this is not allowed, this is allowed, and so on. You can work within this, and you cannot work within this. There are many scholarship you will read where people are trying to somehow engage with other people by actually going against their own religious ideologies. You can't do that. You have to be faithful. Would you not? You need to be faithful within your religious traditions, within your belief system, and if there is a scope to work together, that's where you can. And this is where people who are scholars and religious elders, if you have that in your belief system, they need to drive that conversation, not Tom, Dick, and Harry's on the street.
Well, I think that both. I think it goes both ways.
No, you can exchange, but they're only the ones in the
because if people are throwing bottles or words back and forth at each other on the street, it creates less of a harmony. That's acute solving the problem. But if you want to solve a problem that is a long term that we're discussing, it needs to be known how to engage as multicultural society or multi-faith communities.
So there was, I heard somebody say this, and it was in reference to my religion, but I think it applies almost to all religions, that oftentimes the only piece of scripture, and you believe the Quran is scripture, you still call that scripture, right? The only piece of scripture that most people will ever read is you, right? So as we present ourselves, I just wonder about those things. And I'm no scholar, but I definitely think as religious people, I wonder if we're thinking too small about the effect that we can have on others, and just to say that, you know, here's a place of mutual safety. Here's a place of mutual peace. I definitely believe that there is salvation attached to certain things, but I also think that there's peace in this world, and I really believe that many of our greatest teachers were prophets of peace. There were definitely wars and difficulties that had to be done in order to, but I also think that God is a God of peace as well. So,
as I said, these exclusivity claims of religion needs to be taken into context of any kind of interfaith community discussions, and then you can see whether there's a permissibility options of having this engagement together, working together or not. As I said, often if you don't have that in place, then there will be a lot of diluting of your own ideologies, and you will actually fall short in actually believing in your fundamental concepts. You might have to say, you know what, it's okay, like, you know.
I think what you can work towards, or actually I'd like to ask, do you think that from interfaith concepts you can actually work together and say these are the 2-3 things that we can do together, because they don't contradict any of our truth claims.
So I mean, I would leave that with people who are specialized to make that judgment.
I'm kind of out of my depth on that as well. I want one other thing though, is a little off the topic. Is I really like your coat. I think that's awesome. That's a really cool coat. And where are you from?
Getting cold.
Are you originally from here?
No.
Where are you from?
I'm from the Indian subcontinent. So guess where that? So that's India, Pakistan, Bangladesh.
Okay.
All together from that region.
Yeah. How long have you been here?
Long enough, I think. Many years.
I can tell you how long I've been here. It's been one day less than a week.
Okay. I'm gonna be here.
We're just traveling.
You're traveling,
busy,
going back.
So,
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, this has been great.
It's a pleasure speaking to you.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Because you're quite, trying to work together. It's worth reading the Quran to get the perspective the Quran has.
Hey, we ran into somebody passing them out the other day, and I thought to myself, I have not read enough on that. It's a religion of nobility, and maybe that's the wrong term, but wonderful. You're doing some wonderful things, so I thought I probably need to educate myself more.
Douglas and Kerry, right?
Nice
pleasure to you.
Thank you.
Safe journey back home, wherever you're going.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to meet you.
You too. Later.